Hey everybody, John Ramdian and Robin Black with you. The UFC returns to New York State. All the action going down in Buffalo, New York on April 8th. A couple of cool fights. The former Bellator lightweight champion, Will Brooks, in a super cool fight against Charles Oliveira. And then we have a great fight to Pat Cummins taking on Jan Blachowicz, who we saw in KSW, making that transition to the Ultimate Fighting Championship in deep waters, especially when you consider John Jones, Daniel Cormier, Rumble Johnson, Jimmy Manuwa, a part of that dangerous light heavyweight division.
Yeah, and Blachowicz, when we were commentating his fights at KSW, he was always pretty impressive to us. Yeah,
Skill
high-level skill guy. Some of the guys from that area of the world sometimes end up with kind of a dual specialty, striking and jiu-jitsu. That's where what you have the chance to train the most, those two aspects. So you see that a lot. Interestingly, he's against Cummings, who, of course, wrestling was always his specialty. Filled in all the blanks and all the spaces, I'm sure. In the other fight, too, Will Brooks is a very physical, dominant wrestler. And Charles Oliveira is very much a dual specialist. He likes, that Brazilian mentality that we've heard in all of the legendary fights coming up in Brazil, where it's like, I'll fight you anywhere. If it's on the feet, I'll knock you out. And if it's on the ground, I'll submit you. Right? That's him. And that game is a dangerous one to play with a slugging wrestler. But this is the Evolve 2017, both these fights are the Evolve 2017 version of when we used to see style versus style. You don't see that much anymore, but you do see these subspecialties within the big picture. And I think that's what both fights are.
One of the things I anticipate in the lightweight matchup is because of all of Will Brooks training at American Top Team. He's going to see everything. You mentioned his physical dominance, that he'll be able to neutralize Oliveira. If he wants to put him up against the cage, he'll be able to take that space away. And if he manages to get the fight down to the ground, he'll be able to avoid those submissions and play the long 15-minute beat-you-up battle.
Yeah, and we love that. These fights are still really cool, like I said, subspecialty kind of matchups, because both things are cool, right? Yeah. Both things are really cool. It's a hard fight these are really hard fights. They always have been. There are even more complicated versions now. If you're the Charles Oliveira player, because you need a finish. Yeah. You got to either, if we're standing, I'll knock you out. And if we're on the ground, I'll submit you. You have to. Or 15 minutes later, you've lost a decision and your legs are sore and you're all busted up and you look like a Picasso. They're hard fights. They're guts fights.
Yeah, what I like about Oliveira, though, is he seems to have the details to access limbs that you're aware of the limbs, but he can get to certain areas and certain submissions that you might not be prepared for.
Yeah, and he can submit Will Brooks, but it's hard. Will Brooks is he's a real legit, he's a motherfucker. Well, yeah, we can do whatever we want now, right? Will Brooks is a motherfucker. There's no doubt. Really fun to watch too. Real swagger to the way he fights. And so if he wins a fight of this nature, he is caving you in and passing the half guard, beating you up, getting regarded and stuff. And if Oliveira wins, what's so cool about Oliveira's game, and this is something I'm sure that, all the smart people, and there's a lot of them down in Florida, Mike and Dean Thomas, all those guys, and they know what's up. Mike Brown is the coach you want in this scenario. He spent his whole life beating up guys in this manner, right? But what's different about Charles Oliveira is when he gets a submission, he doesn't do it by getting a hold of something of you. He does it by moving himself into the position. Yeah. So if you grab my arm and you pull it into a position and you hyperextend it, I tap. But I keep my arm from being taken. I put it in your biceps, your armpits, put my head under you. I keep it there. And that's
he rolls and
twists and shimmies using his hips to open places and then move himself into the place. So that's a little different. You have to be ready for that. That's how he gets you. Right. And they'll be ready for that. But it'll be a cool thing to watch.
And do you expect the same thing with Pat Cummins? Cummins, sure, let's try to beat you up first. Yeah. And because of Blachowicz, because of his stature, he can play that outside game. Okay, that's not working if you're Pat Cummins. Let's put this guy on the ground. And then you have the Polish fighter playing the guard game as well.
Yes, I think we'll see some of that for sure. It's hard to say. Pat Cummins is a really interesting fighter. his UFC debut was against Daniel Cormier
Insane.
on like 2 or 3 weeks' notice. That is insane. Like, that's insane. It's just
Insane.
Bananas, you know? And he took it. So that tells you.
And he knew who Dan Cormier was.
Of course, they knew
it's not
each
as if
other
it's
well.
like, Daniel Cormier, I've never heard
Cormier?
of him.
Who is Danny Cormier?
He knew exactly
Yeah,
who
he knew
Cormier
what he was.
so-
And he poked the bear because he wanted the job. He wanted, you know, the dude didn't have a problem with Dan. His job was to get people
Create interest.
talking.
Yeah.
They told him in one very specific way or in a general way, hey, man, we need you to step up here. And if you do, you'll have a job and you'll have your... He did. It tells you something about he's willing to do what it takes. It's. I like this fight. I do. There's some about Cummins. I really like watching him fight too. And Blachowicz, we loved. He was one of our favorites to commentate at KSW. So we got a cool one here. This pair of fights will not be talked about a great deal the week of 210, but they're cool.
Yeah, 155 pounds. The former Bellator champion Will Brooks really trying to get to the top of the 155-pound class in the Ultimate Fighting Championship, and Pat Cummins, one of the unsung heroes at 205 pounds.